Welcome to the Rewild You podcast. I'm Hannah Ray, a coach, writer, and lover of wild places. On this podcast, I chat with brave, brilliant, creative, and inspiring humans about the turning points and challenges that have shaped them. We go straight for the substance, the kinds of conversations you might have with me on a mountain hike or over a long cup of coffee. If you're drawn to meaningful conversation, practical wisdom, and a hearty dose of adventure, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome to the podcast, Dougal. I'm so excited for our chat today, and thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Hannah. It's nice to be here and be involved with what I think is really cool and meaningful work that you do. So thanks for having me. Awesome.
And I have to admit that I'm a little bit starstruck by having this opportunity to speak with someone who I believe is like New Zealand's sporting royalty. And I've ever only followed you from afar. So today I'm really interested in learning more about the man behind your sporting achievements. So Dougal, can you share with us who you are and just how would you introduce yourself?
Okay, yeah. So my name's Dougal Allan. I am a father of two, Flynn and Matilda. And I think my adult life has centered very much around sport. I've changed my mind a lot, but effectively when I reflect, I've been an endurance athlete. Coast to coast being probably one of the higher profile events that I've done and managed to win a couple of times. I got involved with Ironman racing as a professional. I did adventure races all around the world with pretty cool teammates and pretty cool places. And more recently, I was part of Emirates Team New Zealand at the 37th America's Cup that took place in October over in Barcelona. So that's sort of me, really.
That's incredible. And such a diverse range of experiences that throughout your sporting career, it's not just been one thing, got a skill set that seems to transfer quite well to a bunch of different contexts.
Yeah, there's probably two ways to look at that. I've either got a really short attention span or I like a new challenge. Hopefully it's more the latter.
Yeah. And I guess that leads me into my first question is I'm always curious, well, there's two things, and that is one, the beginning, how someone gets into sport and then reaching the level of performance that you have. But then two, alongside that is what is your motivations to keep going? So can you tell us a bit about your path to becoming a super successful endurance athlete?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, without getting too sort of detailed and chronological with things, I would say that I grew up as a very typical young Kiwi living in a small town in the North Island, Foxton. If you're a male, you played rugby. If you're a female, you played netball, and that was about it, really. But I've got three other siblings and just sort of love being outside and racing around, being active, experimenting, being naughty at times, doing things I shouldn't have done, learning from my mistakes. That was probably my childhood in a nutshell, really. Applied to get into phys ed school down in Dunedin, didn't get in, decided to go anyway and do a bridging year. So that was, when I reflect, that was one of the first opportunities, I suppose, to have taken a different path. But luckily I chose not to and continued on my way. Rugby was my passion. Concussions got in the way. That door slammed shut. Detoured into running and mountain biking and eventually picked up kayaking while I was at university. That's sort of where the multisport thing began. I just loved being outside. It was that student culture that I liked sometimes, but wanted to avoid at other times. And that's where multisport took me away from that when I needed to be away from it. And then as with anything that we do that we really enjoy doing, we do more of it because it's something we enjoy. And by doing more of it, we usually become pretty good at it. And so that's sort of what happened for me with multisport. I was just doing what I loved doing, running, biking, kayaking, being outside, meeting new people. Dunedin, I thought, had an amazing hinterland for that sport. Started doing some events. And long story short, the Coast to Coast is kind of the flagship event. It became a goal, or an unspoken goal at least, that I wanted to maybe try and win it one day, because that's what those robotic like heroes of mine were doing, and I wanted to be like them. And so, yeah, that's sort of where I've come from, and how I sort of got to that level, I guess.
But having those concussions makes a lot of sense, because I was wondering if you're, physically, like performance-wise talented, then what happened to the rugby track?
Yeah.
Multisport's a pretty good plan B.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Richie McCaw's decided that's a pretty good plan B.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's good for Richie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, eh? Yeah, rugby was so important to me, and it was like life wasn't worth, well, that's not true. I was going to say life wasn't worth living when I realised I couldn't keep playing rugby, but it was a pretty daunting.
Big turning point, yeah.
Yeah, but then what that led to is more than I'd ever dreamed of now. So, yeah, I've probably got passions to thank to an extent, although I wouldn't wish them upon anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you find, like, was there a pretty good crew of multisport folks in Dunedin, or were you part of a running club and then there was the biking and the kayaking? Were people, when you were getting into multisport, was that one of the heydays of multisport?
Yeah, it certainly felt like it. There was lots of events. You could do $5 events. You could do the coast to coast for $1,000. So there was a lot of that, but certainly connection to a community was a huge draw card for me. And I didn't know at the time, but I now know that there are 3 really important ingredients to a lifelong commitment to something, and they are autonomy, competence, and connection. And now when I look back, I go, well, no wonder I fell in love with multisport, because there was certainly autonomy. I was choosing this path myself. I was becoming quite competent at the 3 different sports. And there was just an incredible community involved in multisport. And I just loved, as us Kiwis say, I love the cut of their jib. They were my sort of people. I felt a real sense of belonging quite early on. So that's probably a big part of what carried me through and continues to keep me involved in the sport, because there's a cool group of people that do it.
You're right. I totally agree also with the community aspect of multisport. Just a bunch of really, really cool people.
Yeah.
So from when you had those first inklings that you thought you might have a crack at winning coast to coast, what was that like? Did you kind of have that idea and then it was the next year that it happened, or what was that progression for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'd be willing to bet that I have the most second places in the one day coast to coast in history. I've taken 5 times, third
wow,
a couple of times. So one way to look at it is I've lost the race 8 times out of 10. But yeah, like my first, so I did the 2-day race. You had to do the 2-day race first back in those days. I did the 2-day race and I won it, which honestly I didn't expect to. And that gave me a real sort of boost of, I should take this a bit more seriously. But the gap between the 2 and the 1-day field was like enormous. It was a whole nother stratosphere of athlete that did the 1-day race. So I stepped into the 1-day arena the following year and finished 8th, which I was stoked with. Like I didn't think I'd get top 10. So that probably illustrates a little bit how much ground I knew I needed to cover to get to that top step. My first 1-day race was 2009, and I won the race for the first time in 2019. So I didn't race every year in that time, but that was the journey that took place for me to win the event.
And when you put that in perspective, that is a long time to be, sticking at it.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of sports careers are lucky to last 10 years alone. It was just a 10-year chapter within a sports career for me. So I think the big thing that kept me in it and eventually led to me being able to win the race was just I loved the process. I loved the journey. And the fact I wasn't winning wasn't taking away from that. If anything, I fell deeper in love with the process, because I was just so driven by all the opportunities to improve. Every time I fell short, I was straight back to, okay, that's cool. I need to do this. This is where that gap sits. And as I say, like, I think it's very easy and natural for us all to fall in love with an outcome or a destination. But the real magic, I think, takes place when it's the process, because that's where we'll spend 99% of our time, right? Is in the journey. So if it's the journey that you fall in love with, then you're in a good place, really.
Yeah, that feels really important. That piece, because you're right, it's so easily to get carried away. And I mean, we need that bigger goal or bigger dream as our true north or our direction that we go towards. But yeah, in the day-to-day, it is that process and that learning that I guess helps. And that's the answer to part of my question, is like, is that what helps keep you motivated? You just love the learning.
Yeah. I think I'm very lucky. I honestly think that's luck. I have always had a huge appetite for learning, and that was before I'd learned or understood anything about the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And once I sort of made sense of that, I realized not everyone is in that sort of a position. And I'm so thankful that I do love to learn, because, growth is just always available to those that are willing to look for the things they don't know, rather than, assuming we know it all here and now. It's like the old saying, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to ask, because I know other people will be curious too. So you might say that you lost the race 8 times, but what was it that went right on those 2 times that you did win?
Yeah, great question. I think when I first won the race, I still remember before the race, it was the first time I genuinely believed I could win it. I think before that, I would tell myself I could win it, and people around me probably believed I could win it. I don't think I, in my heart of hearts, felt that I could win it, rightly or wrongly, but that's probably the big difference. 2019, I showed up to that race and I was in such a good headspace because I knew I had what it took to win the race. I knew it wasn't guaranteed, but I knew I had that ability. And yeah, whether that was because I just sort of moved away for 5 or 6 years into Ironman triathlon and done different events in different parts of the world and sort of come back with a whole new perspective or not, I'm not quite sure, but maybe it was just a maturity thing or whatever it was. Yeah, that it was just simply a mindset shift and a true belief.
In some ways that sounds so simple, like shift my mindset, but yeah, it's interesting that it was that. And then again, a year later, same thing. I showed up and I knew I could win the race, and I didn't win the race. Sam Clark beat me fair and square. So it's not quite as simple as if you believe you can do it, you will, but certainly you will only have a good chance at doing something if you believe you can. And was it the first time that you won it, or was it the second that you did it with some major injury that you sustained?
No. So yeah, 2019 won it. 2020 came second to Sam. 2021 I won it. And then 2022 was my last race, and I knew it was my last race. It was my 10th and final, and I was really happy and content with that being the case. And then a few days before the race, we heard it was going to be a different course because of the weather and the river levels and things. And my old mate, Braden Curry, and he is my mate, I just like to pay him out about it, managed to make a last-minute entry, and having seen that the paddle was going to be an hour versus 4, and he was training for Ironman, and that the bike was going to be 2 or 3 times the length, and beat me, and would have beaten me anyway, but I didn't help my case by breaking my ankle during the run. Not that I knew it was broken, but broke my ankle during the run and carried on through to the finish in second place. And I just remember how symbolic New Brighton Beach was. It was pissing down with rain. It was just so bleak. And I remember reflected everything about how I felt in that moment. Yeah. Second used to feel good for the first couple of times. The second didn't feel good that day.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Tough way to finish.
Yeah. We're now nearly 3 years down the track. And what's really interesting about my reflection on that now is it's a bit like not getting into PE school, carry on to Dunedin, can't play rugby. Okay, let's find out what multisport's about. Coast to coast career finishes in my mind the worst possible way. Little did I know that 6 months later I'd be invited to trial for Emirates Team New Zealand and begin a whole new career in America's Cup sailing. So it's just a real funny perspective now to look back on that moment. And as awful as it was, the lesson I suppose there was just keep going because the best is yet to come.
That's such great advice. And this comes up quite a lot, and I look back on my own experiences as well, and it is like when you feel like you've met a brick wall, that it's just shunting you in another direction that is often, as painful as it can be, is often even better than you could have ever dreamed of or could never have imagined.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I imagine that was pretty similar for your invitation to trial for the America's Cup team too.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a wee bit about that experience?
Yeah. So it was a phone call out of the blue. Nick Gill, who's the strength and conditioning coach for the All Blacks, had sort of been tasked, I suppose, with a bit of shoulder tapping to get certain types of people involved in the trial. They were looking for probably 4 or 5 new cyclors to join their power group. And I think they didn't really want half the country to show up and trial. So effectively, I think they chose about 20 people. Really unique position because you need to push good power on a bike, but you also need to be quite a sort of big build. I mean, I was the small guy and by race day, I'd put on 10 kilos. I was about 90, 91 kilos. And that's small for a cyclor. So it's quite a weird concept, right? A good cyclist, that's huge. And that's why you see a lot of rowers cycling on America's Cup boats. But anyway, the trial was hard. I mean, I took, I think, weeks to recover from the mental trauma and the physical trauma. But it was good enough to make the team. And life changed very quickly for me in that moment. And for my family, we had a 2-year project leading up to an America's Cup that was taking place in Barcelona. So the whole family were going to spend time living in Spain, which was quite exciting, but also, a little bit daunting. And I would say almost the entire team of about 150 are Auckland based. And so I was in a very unique situation where I was Wanaka based, but traveling to and from Auckland to meet certain commitments around the team. So I was sort of kind of part-time, but obviously when I was back home, I was still training and preparing as I would be had I been in Auckland. So yeah, it was an amazing couple of years. There may be people listening that don't know. A lot of people will know, but we won the Cup again in October. It's still a little bit surreal to reflect on. I was sailing on that AC-75. I mean, these boats are just space age, right? They're the Formula One of sailing. And we would go out sailing just in training, and it was pinch me moments all the time. Just couldn't believe I was sitting on an America's Cup boat with Pete Burling and Blair Tuke, and it was just the stuff of dreams, really, for me. And so that pretty much summarizes the last couple of years for me.
Yeah. And were you someone that when you were younger, you'd watched, I might not get the facts entirely correct, but Black Magic first, retaking the America's Cup?
Yeah.
I must have been at primary school, but were you, with the whole nation, it felt like you were wearing your red socks and cheering everyone on? Crazy.
I wasn't a diehard fan, but I think I was 10 in 1995 when they won. And I do remember that, thinking, holy moly, we just won this big sailing event. Are we good at sailing? I didn't realize we were. And then just taking a bit of an interest in it, being devastated as most of the country would have been when, I was going to say when we lost it, but more so when Peter Blake died in South America. And yeah, I think I became quite attached to the whole sailing story. That seems to be a big part of Kiwi's DNA, really.
Yeah, I mean, when we have the furthest that you can ever be from the ocean is maybe 2 or 3 hours drive. So it makes a lot of sense that sailing is quite a part of the Kiwi culture, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. We had Ngāti Whātoa from Auckland with us in Barcelona, and that was special. Our dock out, which is when we basically leave our base, climb on the boat and head out to race in the cup. We were led out by their waka, and so there was probably 20 warriors paddling us, leading us out. And if there was ever a symbolic moment of how that marine kind of lifestyle was ingrained in us as Kiwis, that was it to me. I mean, the Māori had to get to New Zealand somehow many years ago from Hawaii, and so, being a skilled seagoing person is very much part of who we are as Kiwis, eh?
Yeah, so true. And just to put it in context, because I don't know either, the output that you were required to do on those bikes, how does that compare to what you might do in Ironman or what the Tour de France? I know there's different skills and specificities in those riders too, but how would you place those demands of being a cycler in the cycling world?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's quite cool to talk about to people that sort of know a little bit about cycling, because it sort of gives a bit of perspective on what the demands on that boat were. But for people, I guess just in simple terms, cyclists generally exceed in the sport if they're both quite powerful and small in stature, because then you get that good power versus weight ratio, power to weight ratio, I guess you'd call it. Because our job on the boat was effectively to power the hydraulic system that moved the sails around, it was purely a power game. The more watts we could produce, the more accurately the sailors could sail the boat. And so that's why we had big human beings. There were guys in the power group that were over 100 kilos. And they look hilarious, by the way, in Lycra out road cycling on the streets of Spain. Like you don't normally see someone who looks like a bodybuilder riding in Lycra on a little skinny road bike. That's what we looked like. It was quite funny. Anyway, I digress. Couple of things I would say, maybe just to give a bit of a feel for what was involved on the boat. One is my ability so my power over a 20-minute period as a multisporter versus my power over a 20-minute period as a cyclor, the difference was probably 100 watts. So, 25% higher. And that was 2 years of training specifically for the task at hand. But it probably just shows how much extra power was required on that boat versus in the world of multisport and triathlon. Mm-hmm. And then maybe another good little perspective for, I was going to say the lay person, but someone who just wants to get a feel for what's involved. You've got the best cyclist in the world right now, Tadej Pogacar, who's, Tour de France champion, world champion, those sorts of things. And then you've got probably our strongest cycler was Hamish Bond, our 3 times Olympic gold medalist. And their 20-minute powers would be the difference of 100 watts, which I think is mind-blowing. You're talking about the best cyclist in the entire world and our cyclor, and our cyclor is putting 100 watts, 25% more power through a bike over 20 minutes than Tadej Pogacar. So obviously Tadej Pogacar is about 30 plus kilos lighter than Bondi, and if they rode up a hill, Bondi would be left for dead. I'm not saying he's a better cyclist, but that just illustrates the demands of being a cyclor in an America's Cup.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, big difference.
And that's perfect. That's a great way to highlight putting that in context in the cycling world.
Yeah. The other challenge, I suppose, for us on the boat was heat, because there was no real airflow down in that cockpit. So again, if you're cycling outside, you get that nice kind of airflow moving past your body. Even if you're cycling indoors, often you'll use a fan or open a window or something to get some airflow. And for us, that was a big challenge, was just being down in a cockpit and losing litres of sweat. But like anything, you just train for it and adapt.
What kind of temperatures were you racing in over there?
Well, luckily for us, come October, it had cooled down a bit. We were training through July, August. It was 35 degrees some days. So down in the cockpit, it was well over 40 degrees. But come October, I think race days were sort of more in those mid-20s. So the cockpit was still north of 30 degrees with no airflow. But when you had been in, 10 degrees warmer, it actually felt quite good.
And that's all about the training and adaptation and, preparing for the conditions that you're going to be performing in, right?
Exactly, yep.
Mm-hmm. So it must have been, when did you come home? Was it November?
Yeah, start of November.
Yeah. So you wrote a blog post around that time that I read, and you shared some insights around some possible changes. To me, it didn't read like an outright retirement announcement, I don't think. But you're definitely in that space of questioning what was coming next. And I have a quote from you here: "The uncertainty feels equal parts scary as it does exciting." So can you share with us a bit about what's going on there? And I love that, because to me, uncertainty and unknown, I feel that the scale's way more towards the scary rather than exciting. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So tell us a bit about kind of that questioning and that possible change that you're in at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And it still feels that way. But I suppose what I was trying to illustrate was that, as an athlete for so long, I'd been an athlete most of my adult life. You identify, that's your identity, right? You're an athlete. And so I was trying to process the idea that life moving forward might require me to identify myself differently, because I was possibly and may still possibly no longer be an athlete. So that's scary, and that involves uncertainty. But I think what I was beginning to learn then, and I'm continuing to learn now, is being an athlete may have sort of superficially been how I identified myself, but it wasn't my identity. Like, I'm more than just an athlete. And so what are my values, and how does that take me forward into whatever comes next? And what has my life as an athlete so far taught me and given me to equip me with whatever comes next? And that's sort of the journey that I've been on.
Yeah, I know that other people will relate, whether they're full-time professional athletes or weekend warriors or somewhere in the middle, that athlete identity can be quite strong. And for all of us, there's different reasons for that. Some being really positive and some being maybe more on the shadow side of, coming from fear or needing to prove ourselves for whatever reason. But what is that? Do you feel like that shift out of, or changing from an athlete identity into something else, is that kind of sticky, or are you ready to, you spoke about that growth mindset before, are you just ready to adopt and open up to something else?
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of both, really. It is challenging, remains challenging, will probably continue to feel challenging for some time, particularly because, the door isn't completely shut on maybe another America's Cup. Like, I know right now I'm not a professional athlete, but I love riding my bike and I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and I'm doing all those things. Now they're a hobby, not a job, but I don't know if I've, retired as such, although as it currently stands, I'm not an athlete. So I think what's helped has been going a bit deeper into what qualities I suppose I have as a human being that led to me having success as an athlete. And so I've spent a lot of time trying to dig into some of that stuff, because I know it will be those qualities that move me into whatever comes next. And if I'm in touch with those qualities, I think it'll become a little bit more of a guiding compass. So, I mean, the three words that I've sort of come up with for me personally were integrity, loyalty, humility. And it took me a while to come up with those three things. One or two might have come a little bit easier. Others sort of took time, months really, to come up with. But since I've come up with them and sort of really tried to tune into what they are and how they're part of me, it's been, invaluable as far as what the next steps have been and how those next steps will continue to develop moving forward.
I love that, because that is exactly where I wanted to head to next, is because like this change for you, whether you end up leaving the athlete world or maybe going for another America's Cup cycle, so many people can relate with that type of transition, whether it's an athlete or you're changing careers or you've lost a job or just like a life stage. Where did the inspiration come from to reconnect with your values or what's important to you? Because I know for me as well, when I through my own season of grief and I knew I didn't want to continue living life the way that they had been, I dug out some stuff I'd done with a life coach a few years prior to that and just went back to my vet. Like, I didn't know why I was doing that. I feel like this is important and this is going to help. And that has guided me ever since. Without a bigger goal or a bigger vision, those things have been the key to help me make some of those bigger decisions, but also in the day-to-day too. So where did that idea come from for you?
Great question. I would say it came from giving some space to letting that happen, slowing down a lot. I hadn't it's probably a cop-out to say I hadn't had that chance. I hadn't given myself that chance for a long time because I was always chasing the next event. And particularly in the last couple of years, there was an overwhelming obligation that came from me on myself to really just focus everything I had on showing up for that America's Cup for my team. So coming out the other side of that, as you sort of quoted there, it was equal parts scary as it was exciting. And I think a lot of that excitement and fear came from knowing that I was about to enter some space and I was about to allow myself to slow right down, which is quite a scary prospect when you just live life in the fast lane and more and race, train more, get better all the time. To actually stop and give yourself time and space to reflect and understand yourself more is it's quite daunting, I think. Well, it was for me. But as with anything that I've had a resistance to or a fear of, there's so much opportunity that comes from it. And there are three words. I mean, I'm 39 years old and I didn't know those three words from what I'd used to describe myself up until the last few months. It's only then that I've really discovered it. And I would say they're three things that have been a big part of me my entire life. I think to answer your question, it was giving myself that space to go there. I go to a counsellor. She's been amazing. She's challenged me on a lot of things. Part of how I managed to finally get three things out in front of myself was through challenging conversations with my counsellor, who has, as I say, just been so awesome at this time in my life.
That's awesome. And is that something that you sought out her support because you knew you're entering this time of space, or you've been working with her previously?
I hadn't, regrettably, I haven't had my own counsellor ever, to be honest. And so it did take some big life events. I'm going through a separation at the moment. The America's Cup had finished. I didn't know what came next. It actually it took a lot for me to finally push play and find my own counsellor. But I say regrettably because now that I'm there and doing it and seeing all these things develop inside me, I'm like, why didn't I do this years ago? Like
I'm getting shivers because I feel exactly the same way. Yeah.
Totally. And, I'm probably lucky in a way because I met a really good match straight away. I did do a lot of research beforehand, but I was effectively looking within the Wanaka area, which isn't a big city or anything. But, I totally feel like I've landed on a really awesome person that's been, as I say, instrumental recently and sort of move towards the next few things.
Yeah. It's so good to hear because there's actually a few parts of that. Like it can be a really hard process if you're really in the muck of something to be like, I feel like I need support with this, and then going through and doing that research, finding someone that feels aligned is one thing. And then finding someone that feels aligned and had space, or they don't have a long wait list, or they actually have spaces open available for new clients and I work with people who have been through that exact process and find someone they feel like they'd be a really good match with, and then they're like, oh no, I'm not taking on any new clients, and you're right when you really need someone. So as you say, having someone like a long-term relationship with some kind of support person in place before you get to those times of need can be life or game changing.
Sure.
And I have to ask this because I was like this for a long time, and I know it's so much part of our Kiwi culture as well, as seeking help, going to see a counsellor or therapist we feel so much shame around it. There's that sign, it might be a sign of weakness or like I failed because I need help. Would you have thoughts around that? What would you say to that after your experience so far? I agree that can be the perception we have, and who knows, maybe that's a big part of what took me 39 years to go and see a counsellor myself. And also just that sort of stubbornness that, no, life's not perfect right now, but I'll sort of work it out as I go kind of thing. But I know for me, like as a parent and as a coach to endurance athletes, I focus most of my energy and time each day on the people around me. That's not entirely true because, of course, when I go out and do my training and stuff, I feel like I'm really giving something to me. But to actually sit in front of a person and really just sort of focus conversation and intent around me as a person has been just in itself massive. So that's how I would look at it, rather than, it's a sign of weakness or whatever. It's actually just giving to yourself, which is critical. You can't be a good anything, parent, work colleague, in my case, coach, unless you're doing really good things for yourself. And so that's how I see it is, yes, I'm there to help myself, but in helping myself, I'll be better at helping those around me. I think that's such a powerful thing coming from someone like you, especially, who could arguably be one of the toughest and strongest men in the country or in the cycling world.
It's like we have, isn't it?
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Are there, so working with her and visiting your values and identifying those, have there been any other tools that she's offered to you, or has that kind of kick-started your own pursuit of learning about yourself or self-development in any way? What can you share that might be helpful for someone else who was facing a transition or a period of the uncertain or the unknown?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so in terms of like more transferable learnings for anyone, a big one's been focusing my energies and actions around what I can control. And so I've had a couple of years with anxiety that's kept me awake at night and, ruminating thoughts and challenges in that regard, which once I spoke to Rika, my counsellor, about, she was quick to point out that a lot of my energy and time and space was going into things I couldn't actually control. And they were often hypotheticals that may or may not even happen, which I guess is a lot of what anxiety is, right? So that's been a breakthrough. That's an understatement, really. But not every time, but I'm trying to get better at understanding when my thoughts and actions are starting to head in that direction, kind of reining them in and recentering on the things that I can control. So I think that's transferable to anyone at any stage in their life. How do I think and act on the things that I can control? And ultimately that's been the big one. Just another little tool that I've personally found really, really helpful. Not saying everyone should do it, but for me it's just been a revelation, is starting a gratitude journal. And that was a suggestion made by my counsellor. Every night when I hop into bed, I write the date in my journal and I say, today I'm grateful for, and I do 3 points. And that's been a game changer, to be honest. Going to bed each night full of gratitude, it's just made a huge difference. I sleep better. I sleep so much better. And so therefore I wake a little bit more refreshed. And it's just had this incredible flow-on effect for me.
That's so powerful. Because a lot of people talk about or suggest that we keep a gratitude journal, but what is it about that, do you think, for you, that has actually made that big shift?
Yeah, I think I like to do it just before bed deliberately. I don't think that's a rule. People can do it whenever they like, but I like it because I carry that to bed with me, quite literally. I finish my day understanding how lucky I am to have had the day that I've had. And that's not to say the day's been perfect. It never is. But I'm choosing to focus on the things I'm grateful for. And they're not always, necessarily positive things, but they're things that I have gratitude for. And, for me, there's often recurring themes around my kids and even my current state of health, where my body can allow me to climb up that mountain or do virtually anything. Like, that's something a lot of people don't have. And not that it's a comparison game, but it's something I'm just so grateful for right now as I sort of navigate the next steps of my life, is the ability to get out and move around and do things. So, I think going to bed with a full heart has, as I say, been a big change for me in a positive way.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I think I would just add, from my perspective as well, with bringing in that body and nervous system perspective, is that if you let your body as well feel into those things that you've written down, it's expanding our good feeling capacity, that rest and digest state in our nervous system, which, leading into going to sleep allows that more soothing, less activated state as we go on to sleep. Then you've already seen through practice how well that allows you to wake up the next day and feel good. It's that upward spiral of, I guess, not positivity, but that ongoing effect that is beneficial.
It's cool when you put a science to it, because you
I love the science.
But it reinforces that we're on the right track.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine you would have learned quite a lot about yourself and how to manage yourself in really challenging situations, being under extreme physical duress and pain. And as well as parenting. I'm not a parent myself, but I've heard that it's one of the biggest self-development journeys you can go through. Are you learning anything new about yourself through this season of uncertainty?
Absolutely. Probably learning more at the moment than I did through my entire kind of athletic career, really. And again, it's like we talked about earlier, it's having finally had some space to actually go there and understand some more things about myself. But yeah, I think that if nothing else, that's been a success in itself, really, is to move away from sport, even if it is temporarily, and go to some places inside that I haven't given myself the chance to do yet. So yeah, there's heaps going on. It's been amazing. And
if you're comfortable sharing, is there something that you've enjoyed discovering that you didn't know about yourself before?
Yeah, I think I've enjoyed getting more in touch with those kind of key values, I suppose, that I have. And beforehand, I would have just made the assumption that I was good at cycling because I can show up and train every day and deal with a bit of discomfort often, that sort of stuff, which I'm sure was a player. But I mean, if I just focus on the America's Cup and being part of Emirates Team New Zealand, integrity, humility, loyalty. So integrity is critical because you want them to know that you're going to show up and follow through on the things that are discussed as important and required. Loyalty is obviously very important. It's a very secretive world. You need teammates you can trust and that are really going to show that they're loyal to Emirates Team New Zealand and the vision that the team has. And humility, again, powerful, and the All Blacks do it too. No one's bigger than the team. Everyone in that team is an equal, and humility, putting your ego aside and understanding that you are just one part of that bigger picture is important too. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm really enjoying understanding a lot more about how I've been so fortunate to experience the things I've experienced. And it's so much more than just the ability to torture myself day to day, which I'm also relatively good at.
Yeah, I imagine it must be quite enlightening or rewarding to retrospectively apply those values throughout your sporting career so far and see how those solidifies how you came to that success, but also adding another layer of understanding or satisfaction to those two.
Yeah. I also, for the longest time, actually, I've thought a lot about where we've come from as human beings, our evolutionary past. Yeah. And so I get a little bit philosophical around, yes, technology's given us a lot, but it's also taken a lot away from us. And I think discomfort is a critical part of our existence. So yeah, as no one wants it, discomfort, but to understand its place, I think, is very helpful. And, the world I lived in for so long was physical discomfort a lot of the time. But through that, I got that growth and that stimulation that made me a better athlete kind of thing. But also, as awful and hurtful and sad and challenging as psychological discomfort can be, equally, that growth potential that comes from it, if we're willing to sort of see it in that way, is hugely powerful. So, as I say, I think it's very much in our DNA, and to understand and to acknowledge that's very, very helpful in itself, because it helps you reshift a little bit of perspective when things are tough.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't remember who said it to me or where I heard it, but part of that physical pushing is one thing, but it never does you any harm to be a little bit cold and a little bit hungry, just to remind you how good the day-to-day really is.
I remember these God's own events and different events around the world, and you'd be on day 4 and your literally feet are rotting underneath you and you've slept not at all really for the last 100 hours or whatever. And you sort of do go, why am I doing this to myself? I don't need to be doing this to myself. But man, do you appreciate a hot shower and a warm bed when you've spent a week out there torturing yourself? It's almost like the further we go with the pain, the further we can then go with the pleasure in a way. I think that's just
Yeah. Yeah. And linking back into the support piece too, I can see how you're describing that physical discomfort of racing, and especially in America's Cup, you had an amazing team around you. I imagine you would definitely have a strong support team around you for Ironman and multisport as well. But contrasting that with where we've got to with that emotional and psychological discomfort, where often, I was exactly the same, so stubborn to do it on my own, like, I'm just going to figure this out. This is my problem. Why can't we go through that same discomfort process and seek the same level of support that we would with being an athlete, with coaches and the massage and maybe support with nutrition and all of that? It's really only just clicked for me then. Like, that's a great analogy to see the difference in how we don't allow ourselves to gather that same support around.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. What I've found quite interesting too, just in recent times with, challenges in my personal life, and I try to understand how my professional life will look moving forward, is how your friends really reflect back to you how you are to them. Like I've been way more vulnerable and open and honest with some real key friends and family members in my life, and the things they open up to me about in return are like amazing. And so that's been an amazing discovery, is the way the important people in my life have reflected back to me what I've given to them, which in terms of what you've just talked about, feeling support and moving forward not alone, that's just been so powerful, which comes back to a bit of a cliche about talk to your mates and things. But it's been a crazy little discovery in my life.
You're definitely not alone in that. I've worked with some people who, through our coaching work we've done together, they've felt, through me, like this, and the coaching network we do, like, feel that supported enough to go and have some of those hard conversations where they kind of test the waters and open up a wee bit. And it's just such a gift. I'm getting tingles again now. Such a gift to hear when they share what they received or how their sharing was received. And you're right, so many people have that capacity to receive that and be transparent and vulnerable along with us, very more so than we often give them credit for.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been amazing. Like, friends that I've known for years, and just in the last couple of months, go for a walk, chat away, and you discover things they tell you that you had no idea about. But that's therapeutic in itself. And that's, I guess, part of why I'm trying. Well, I'm not even trying. It's sort of coming relatively naturally, but just being a lot more open and perhaps vulnerable in conversations like these. Is I'd love for people to know that, I won the America's Cup and I won the Coast to Coast and I did all these cool things and went to all these amazing places and I could suffer through anything, kind of thing. But actually, no, like same sorts of challenges as anyone else, really. And in many ways, I think didn't cope as well as I could have, because I hadn't really given myself time to understand myself better. So that's now the journey I'm on. But I guess the message there is, like, everyone's a human being and we're all finding our way through life in our own way. And it's all good.
And I could ask so many more questions, but I think that's a lovely place to start shutting it down. So 2 more things. Can you share something that maybe it's personal, maybe it's professional, something that you're excited about at the moment?
Okay. What am I excited about at the moment? Definitely, this is actually quite an easy answer. Definitely time with my children right now, because it's been a busy couple of years. I've been away a lot. And when I've been here, I've also been somewhat distracted by certain projects in the background. Right now, as it stands, and things will change as time moves on, but right now as it stands, when I have my children, I can guarantee them of one thing, and that is time. I will give them me, and I can sense our relationship benefiting from just time. We just hang at a skate park, or we go and sit by the lake, and that's something available to all of us, right? It doesn't matter what you own, how much money you've got. You can always give time to the people around you that you care about. So, yeah, that would be my answer to that.
That's beautiful. And if people want to follow along or hear some more of your wisdom and insights, where can people find you?
Well, I use Instagram, Dougal Allan on Instagram. I have always felt that I'm myself on social media for the most part. I think you'll see a pretty authentic version of me if you follow me on Instagram. I've got a website that probably needs updating, where I, talk about my stuff as an athlete, my stuff as a coach. And that's probably it, really. Generally, if people reach out, I'm keen to always respond in some way. So look forward to hearing from anyone that listens and something resonates, by all means.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I just know that you just shared so much that anyone listening can take away and apply in their own lives, whether that's themselves navigating a tough season or uncertainty, or maybe it is chasing some of those big, scary goals, or even just looking for a way to get through the next day or the next week. So we're wishing you all the very best for your next chapter, whatever that looks like. And we'll be cheering you on no matter what happens. So thanks so much again.
Thank you, Hannah. And really appreciate being invited onto the podcast. And as I often say to myself at the end of each day, the best is yet to come.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Dougal.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining me today on Rewild You. If something resonated with you or gave you a spark, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me over at rewildyouhq.com or connect with me on Instagram at rewildyouhq. If you've been enjoying these conversations, the best way to support the podcast is to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it too. Take care out there, and I'll see you in the next episode.